up to the Atlas, and you're going through cedar forests, and so it just kept changing, always changing. Welcome to 10-Minute Travels. With me, as always, is Shane Patrick.
And with me, as always, is Phil Freeman. Today, we're going to talk about Morocco with special guest, Clay Bastion.
Let's get right to it, shall we?
The roads. I saw a couple pictures of some twisties. I mean, did you guys have expectations before you went there?
Not sure. I expected there to be all that much pavement, but I thought the roads were good. Even in the Atlas Mountains, it wasn't like the roads in the Rockies where the winter breaks them up. But I thought it was all good.
Yeah, I found the quality of the roads weren't particularly something that stood out. But what did stand out was like what Clay said. There was a lot of paved roads. And some of the areas that we went through, like the steep canyons or the open desert, spectacular stuff that is world class. And, relatively no traffic between these towns or cities. When we got off the beaten path a little bit, there were sections where we wouldn't cross with traffic for, 10, 15 minutes, even half an hour at a time when we got pretty remote. But what I did find is that there was such a variety. By the end of the 13 days, you'd ridden along the coast of the Atlantic, and now you're in the Sahara, and now you're going through the Midwest, like the Southwest of the United States. Dry, arid, dry rocks and landscape that, and then you go up to the Atlas, and you're going through cedar forests, and so it just kept changing, always changing.
I really expected Morocco to be, mostly dirt and sand and no trees and not really a beautiful landscape. And I was completely wrong. It had a great variety. In fact, maybe in Nevada or California, you can ride in one day to a desert and to mountains and to water, but Morocco's got it all pretty close.
Well, in those other places you mentioned, you certainly would not have it to yourself.
Yeah.
What sort of, I'm imagining the towns are anywhere where there's a little bit of a water, right? In between being very dry. But were there, aside from the Atlas Mountains, what's the vegetation like in between the cities where no one's tending it except, Mother Nature?
There's a lot of dirt. And, we'd go through little villages that had most of the buildings were still in construction. Like, they stopped building the upper floor a few years ago, and I guess that's how they build homes there, because there's no mortgage finance for people wanting to build a home, so they build it as they can, and it all looks incomplete and kind of different.
And was it like hand packed concrete, and then has the rebar sticking up all over for the next level?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know how they do. I don't think they even know what HVAC is. They probably have windows that are open most of the year and a stove in the winter. I don't know, but and I doubt there's lots of plumbing. But
yeah. Well, and if it's really dry like that, there probably aren't a bunch of biting flies and annoyances like that either if your windows are always open.
We didn't have any annoyances other than those monkeys, and they kind of scared me.
He's still getting counseling. One thing I did find interesting there is that you just follow the water. and wherever the water popped up, that's where you'd find your towns that have been around for more than 2,000 years. And there's a huge, that link between humanity and water is really in your face there. And, there are places there that are as old as anywhere in the world. The oldest university is from Fez, and you see that wherever the water starts, the towns will crop up all along it. And you'll be going along a desert landscape, and all of a sudden you'll start to see palms. And you realize that the water is not above the land, it's below, and it's still flowing through the Sahara, and life goes on. And so these little towns that we're going through, have been around for as long as people have been around. And the water generally dictates, of course, where everybody is dispersed, and even in the driest of landscapes. And if you have appreciation for water, or if you don't, by the time you're done in Morocco, you have a grand appreciation for where that little rascal goes.
That's maybe the big difference between Morocco and places like Algeria. Without water, you can't have people. And without people, you don't have towns and villages and industries and all that. And Morocco appears to be a very prosperous country for North Africa.
It would be interesting to kind of talk about the local culture in that, it's primarily Muslim, and, drinking alcohol is basically not done there. And for a Westerner, it's a little bit of a change, because some towns simply didn't offer alcohol. Some hotels simply didn't offer. And I realized too, now that I'm in South America and I'm looking around, you can't go 2 blocks without seeing a bottle shop, and it's in your face. But there, it just wasn't offered, and you just didn't see it. And I noticed a couple subtleties there, just being a motorist. I found that they do have an aggressive nature, just like many countries, to drive, but not over the top. And I also found out, I did this little index. If you're going down a straightaway and you see there's a car about to pull out, they would not. They had respect. They would let you get ahead of them before they pulled out. And I thought, is this tied to alcohol? And then when you go through a town and you don't see somebody just passed out on the street, and you're talking a town of several 100,000 people, that would never happen in South America, right? And you think, is this tied to alcohol? But it's a really funny, subtle thing. And I found that they were genuinely respectful of your space on a motorcycle, and very aware of you, and not aggressive to a point of being frightened. Whereas I just got done with 12 days in Brazil, and I was frightened a couple times just because of the aggressive nature. And I go, is this because of alcohol?
Well, like so many places, when we see children, they want to slap hands when you're riding by, and we try to avoid that. But most of the children give the throttle thing. They want you to rev the bike up. But when they get to be young teenagers, about 1 in 5 will just flip you off and laugh at you. I didn't quite expect that, but I did.
Along with the traffic, what about the road dogs?
Well, the cat index is really, really high in Marrakech. They just don't like them. And in other towns, you found dogs, and some of them had tags. They could be street dogs, but they got checked out medically. And then there were the street dogs from here to there. And I didn't find them to be as a nuisance as like Peru, where they'll just come tearing out after you time and time again. But there was, as soon as you got into the hinterlands, you started running into a higher dog index. But I didn't find it to be a nuisance. Did you see anything like that, Clay?
No, they were polite. And cats don't chase anything.
No, they can't be bothered.
Yeah.
We did have an incident with a camel, but that's unrelated.
Morocco, special guest, Clay Bastion. If you want to learn more about him or any of the other things we do at 10 Minute Travels, check us out at 10minutretravels.com.
And we want to remind you to make sure that your sense of humor matches your sense of adventure.
And please like, subscribe, and share this podcast on all the platforms.